All right, so we've got this story, and it is wild.
It's really something else, yeah.
It's like you've got these top officials, the people with the biggest secrets,
Right.
just casually chatting on a messaging app about, sensitive stuff. And then, boom, a journalist just gets dropped right into the conversation.
Just like that.
So we're going to take a deep dive into this whole security mess.
Yeah, a real security lapse.
Yeah, where a reporter ends up in this private chat about a bombing operation in Yemen.
Which is unbelievable when you think about it.
Totally. And we're going off of these transcripts from 2 BBC News reports on YouTube.
Ooh, right.
One's about the actual incident, and the other's all the reactions and fallout that came after.
Lots to unpack there.
Oh, yeah. So our mission today is to figure out exactly what went down, how everyone involved reacted to this crazy situation, and then, what this means in the bigger picture, especially for national security and all the trust that's involved.
It's a big one for sure.
So, okay, imagine this. Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, right?
Yeah, I know him.
He suddenly finds himself in this private Signal group chat. But this is not your typical group chat, like planning a birthday party or something.
No, not at all.
This is the entire U.S. national security team, including the vice president.
Wow.
We've all been added to the wrong group chat at some point, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But this is like next level.
Oh, yeah, this is way beyond that.
And the timing of it all is what's really crazy, because according to the reports, Goldberg found out about these planned military strikes 2 hours before they even happened.
That's a long time.
Right. The BBC called it an extraordinary breach of security. And, I mean, when you think about it, this is information about a military operation that's supposed to be top secret, and then it's just out there.
Even if it was an accident, the potential consequences are huge.
Huge. And then it gets even wilder because you've got these early messages in the chat talking about a potential bombing to protect ships in the Suez Canal.
Okay.
And Vice President J.D. Vance, he's not so sure about it. He even says far fewer American ships use the canal than European ones. Yeah, and then he messages Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directly and says, if you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again.
Wow, he's not holding back.
Nope, and it's super direct, especially considering what they're talking about.
Yeah, that kind of bluntness is definitely noticeable.
It really is, and what's also fascinating is how casual everyone is being about this whole thing, which, it's a pretty serious matter.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah. I mean, Hegseth replies and says, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic.
So they're just chatting about this military action.
Like it's nothing.
It makes you wonder if this is how they always talk or if this is just particularly casual conversation.
That's a good point. I mean, they're using this language in a channel that should be, super secure and professional for talking about military stuff.
Right. It definitely raises questions about how norms have changed and if this casualness could be a risk when you're dealing with something as serious as national security.
For sure. And it doesn't stop there because the next day they get confirmation that the raid was a success.
Okay.
And everyone's reactions are still surprisingly laid back. Like John Ratcliffe, who was head of the CIA, he just says it was a good start.
Just like that.
Yeah. And then Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, he responds with just emojis.
Emojis.
And then you have Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, saying, good job, Pete, and your team.
So no one seems too bothered.
Not really. Even Susie Wilds, the White House chief of staff, and the president, who in the transcripts is Envoy Steve Wickoff, they also just chime in with emojis.
It's kind of surreal.
It really is. I mean, they're basically just shrugging off this bombing raid that, according to reports from the Houthis, killed 53 people.
Yeah, that casualness is really jarring when you think about the seriousness of what they're discussing and the consequences for the people involved.
Totally. And obviously President Trump was asked about this whole thing.
Oh, wait, yeah.
And his initial response was that he had no idea what they were talking about. Yeah, he straight up said, I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time now, when they asked him about the chat and the journalist being there.
So he's claiming complete ignorance.
Yep. And he even started talking about the hotties, the who, and the hell eyes. It was a total deflection from the security issue.
It's interesting how he handled that. I mean, it makes you wonder about how much he actually knew and how information gets to him.
Right. Like, how can the president not know about something like this?
Exactly. It raises questions about oversight and how information flows at the very top levels of government.
Totally. But to be fair, the White House did later confirm that those messages were real.
Okay.
And then they shifted to focusing on how successful the strikes were against those Houthi targets and saying that the president still totally trusts his national security team, even though the BBC called it a stunning security breach.
So damage control.
Pretty much. But Trump didn't stop there.
Oh, no.
He went after Jeffrey Goldberg, the journalist who broke the story.
He did.
Oh, yeah. He went on this whole rant calling it a blistering attack. He insisted that the stuff they talked about in the chat wasn't actually classified and defended whoever that key official involved was. We're assuming it's Hegseth.
Right.
And he even called Goldberg a total sleazebag.
Wow, that's intense.
It was a pretty aggressive way to discredit the reporter and maybe distract from the whole incident.
It definitely seems that way.
And of course, The Atlantic came out swinging, defending Goldberg's reporting and accusing the White House of being hostile to journalists.
Which is pretty standard in these situations.
Yeah, it always highlights that tension between the government wanting to control information and the press wanting to hold them accountable.
For sure. And it wasn't just the press. Senior Democrats also chimed in, calling it one of the most stunning military intelligence breaches of recent times.
So both sides were concerned about this.
It seems.
And then Trump tried to downplay the whole thing, like he always does.
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
He said it was just a risk of using an app and compared it to not being in the Situation Room himself.
So basically minimizing the seriousness of it.
Exactly. He was trying to shift the focus away from the big questions, like how did this happen and what does it say about how they communicate?
It's a classic deflection tactic.
It is. And then you've got Defense Secretary Hegseth, who can't seem to keep his story straight.
What happened there?
So at first he denied texting any war plans.
Okay.
But then later he claims that he was texting war plans, including details about targets, weapons, and even the order of the strikes hours before it all happened.
So which is it?
That's the problem. We don't know for sure.
Yeah.
And Goldberg has said that he didn't publish the specific details of those plans.
Right.
But the fact that he saw them in the chat is still a huge security risk.
It definitely is, and it makes those conflicting statements from Hegseth even more worrying.
Totally. And remember Joan Ratcliffe, who was actually in that chat?
Right.
He didn't hold back. He called it a huge mistake and utterly unprofessional.
So he's admitting it was a big deal.
Yeah, and he also pointed out that nobody even apologized or acknowledged how serious this was.
That's pretty telling.
It is. And then some former officials from the Biden administration weighed in and said it was ridiculous to think that information about military attack plans wouldn't be classified.
So they're saying it had to be classified.
Yeah, highly classified. And that really emphasizes how bad this breach could be for national security.
It definitely adds another layer of seriousness to it.
And what's also interesting is that the White House didn't seem to want to investigate this whole thing properly.
Really?
Yeah, instead they tried to change the subject completely by announcing that the vice president was going to Greenland.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, the BBC report even said that they did it to distract from the security mess, and they linked it back to Trump's old idea about wanting to buy Greenland.
So a deliberate attempt to divert attention.
It sure seems like it.
And what about the impact on U.S. allies? I mean, wouldn't they be concerned seeing this whole thing unfold?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the countries that share their most sensitive intel with the U.S.
Right.
They see this happening. They hear those comments from Vance and Hegseth about Europe being freeloading and pathetic.
Which Trump agreed with.
Exactly. It's got to make them think twice about sharing anything important.
Yeah, why would they trust that their information will be handled carefully after seeing this?
Exactly. It could really hurt those international partnerships.
It's a valid concern. I mean, trust is crucial in those relationships, and this whole incident definitely puts a dent in that.
For sure. So let's recap. We've got a journalist accidentally added to a top secret chat about a bombing in Yemen. Everyone's being super casual about it, even after the fact. There's confusion about whether the info was classified, and the whole thing's caused a political storm and made our allies nervous.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is, and it all boils down to this in the age of instant messaging and all that. What are the risks of using these casual methods for national security stuff?
That's the big question. And how does something like this affect the trust that our allies have in us?
Right. It makes you think about all the different perspectives, the officials, the journalists, the reactions from both sides of the political aisle.
It really gives you a glimpse into how the government communicates in this digital age and how they handle sensitive information.
Definitely lots to think about. So if you found this deep dive interesting, make sure you subscribe and follow our channel for more deep dives on important stuff.
And if you want to support us, you can find us on Patreon. The link's in the description.
We also love hearing what you think, so leave your comments about this podcast down below.
Let us know what you think.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.